Hashtag Real Race Talk. It's the Revved Up Sports Show talking local, regional, and national action. Here's Bobby Chaffee and Rodney Rodriguez.
Welcome in, friends. Another Monday. It is time for hashtag Real Race Talk. It is the Revved Up Sports Show, talking local, regional, national, international. All kinds of racing is what we're talking about right here. And we welcome all of you guys for being a part of it. And we are in Texas is where the show originates from. That's Bobby Chaffee over there on the right side, I guess, as you're looking at this. Showtime, Bobby Chaffee. I'm Rodney Rodriguez. We look forward to breaking down some really cool stuff with you this evening. A couple of really cool guests that we have lined up here from the Texas area. Justin Whitehead's going to join us in a little bit. Factory stock, race car builder extraordinaire. And then we're going to talk to Cody Leonard, who was a big winner in the modifieds, South Texas IMC modifieds this past weekend as well at I-37. Bobby, how we doing, my brother?
Man, it's hot, dude. I went outside to move in some trash cans and get a few things done before the show, and damn, it's hot outside already. I mean, it felt like it was like late July, early August temperatures, and yet we just in the middle of June.
Yeah, a little balmy, man. And I'm starting to realize that I'm getting old, because it's like when I get out in the heat, like when I'm at a race, like at Corpus this past weekend, I wasn't outside very much, but even in the evening, it's hot. It's like the next day I've got like red spots, and it's like, okay, that's the heat's starting to get to me. So the age and all of that is finally starting to set itself in, and it's not a very good feeling, my man. It's like, damn. What? Oh, how the mighty have fallen! When that kind of shit starts happening, I'm like, God, come on, man. But it is what it is. It is what it is.
Don't worry, dude. As soon as that little disturbance blob, whatever the hell you want to call it, in the Gulf of Mexico comes hit, your knees and your ankles and all that'll start hurting. You won't worry about the heat as much.
Yeah, that was. I didn't want to. Yeah, I never really want to piss on people's fun, but I was talking to a couple of people today, and they're like, oh, brand new race weekend, I'm gonna go here, there, and this is here in Texas. This is in the Texas area. Folks that are planning to go to the racetrack, I wouldn't. I'd have a backup plan, because I was just watching a while ago. I mean, you got all the different spaghetti models and all these different things that you watch when you have stuff out in the Gulf like that, and it's just looking really, really bad. It's looking really bad out there, man.
Doesn't look promising for my friends in Southeast Texas, say, around the vicinity of Edna, Texas. Doesn't look real good for racing conditions coming up there on Wednesday and Thursday, coming up here the next couple of days anyway.
Yeah. Tim, very, very good. Tim, you sound like my wife. Why'd you have to bring that up, my man? It could be that as well, but I don't know. But and obviously this weekend is supposed to be where are we at? 17th. It's supposed to be Houston. Houston is coming up on Saturday, but a lot of what I've seen seems to be kind of trickling over there to where it could affect that. So it may be another weekend off for Houston, and it's one of those things where a lot of people say, don't say the R word or whatever, but it's like sometimes it's just inevitable. You know what I mean? And when you're talking about shit out in the Gulf, I mean, a rainstorm is one thing. A little passing shower, renegade shower, as my man Zach Shields says. But when you have something like that that's out there, that it's really hard to stave old Mother Nature off when that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, when you can see it coming and it's coming, it's a little rough. I mean, like even when like there's already an 80% chance of rain in Austin area there on Wednesday and Thursday. So it's kind of like, if the rain's moving up that far, South Texas and Southeast Texas, get ready, because it's going to be a hammer down time coming up the middle part of this week.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good thing. So I think the whole thing is, I mean, for our friends that are along those coastal areas, I mean, plan accordingly. So, but anything that you're looking at around here, probably not going to be. I mean, you never know. I mean, it may go a different direction. I mean, who knows? So anyway, our man Dink is checking in from Mobile once again. Thank you for coming back. That's always a good sign when you get people to come back. It's one thing like anything else. Like we talk about going to the racetrack. It's one thing to get them there, but when they come back and watch again, that's a very good thing. Mark is checking in as well, so thank you. So you guys feel free to check in and let us know what's going on in your world, what's going on in your racing sectors, because I mean we're going to talk about what's going on here, and that'll kind of be the thing right there. I do want to mention, Bobby, I know we were talking, I guess it was Wednesday, and again, just the whole thing is with asphalt racing in Texas, to where it's the fact that we don't, I mean, we still have Houston, but that we don't have the dynamic thing that was asphalt racing in Texas like we used to have back in the day. To turn on Berlin, and these guys and Ricky and them are running a UARA super late model race in the middle of the week, and you've got that car count, you've got that place full the way it was, and then Bubba Pollard right there. How about that? You know, when I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when folks were like, oh, the end of Bubba Pollard and so forth. And, he had kind of gone a different direction, doing some different stuff, doing with different cars and so forth. And it was like Bubba's back or whatever when he started winning races again. This is how good he is, that he has that luck that he ends up on the pole after qualifying 8th. And then still, I mean, even with, not his best car ever, still finds a way to win money in the bank. That was some damn good racing that we saw at Berlin.
Berlin always puts on a pretty good show. I even started watching a little bit on Saturday because they started earlier than you guys did down at the race ranch, because they're in Michigan a little hour ahead or so. And even the weekly show was great there. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Flipped over to watch a little bit of racing action with you guys down at the race ranch. Flipped over to watch the Stems race there at I-37. So even though I didn't get a chance to go anywhere and be anywhere this weekend, I ended up, catching up on the couch. So,
yeah,
that's the best thing about a streamer. What we always say, if you cannot be there, find yourself a streamer to find yourself the way to interact with the racetrack. So,
yeah, that's the whole thing about it. I mean, you go to a streamer like that, and they're going to put you right there. I mean, it's as good as being there. I mean, you're going to hear the guys and ladies that call the events right there. I mean, it really is. I mean, and I joke around about that a lot, where I say it's just as good as being there, but not quite as good. This whole conversation we're having about heat, is better than being there. When you get into that kind of thing. I mean, if you're sitting in the Barca Lounger and you don't have to be out in that. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And the good thing is, and we say that, and we don't want it to seem like, or I don't want it to seem like, I'm saying don't go to the racetrack. But the whole thing is, with most of these streaming, outfits, and of course we're on 2 of them right now, that a lot of that money that goes into that goes back to the racetrack. So that's kind of the win-win right there. And I think people don't understand that, because I get that. Do you get that question a lot, Bobby? People are like, with short track racing, does that hurt? I mean, it does. I mean, because you don't have to go. But I mean, I think at the same time, as long as some of that money's reciprocating back, it's not totally a bad loss for the racetrack.
It's not as bad a loss as nobody sitting there at all. You get a little bit of reciprocal stuff with the not the licensing fee, broadcast fee, whatever we want to call it there, right? And so you get a little bit of income coming from that. I mean, it is still going to affect the front gate a little bit, but it doesn't affect the pocketbook as much as having the empty seat. We've always said on this show, the most expensive seat at a racetrack is the empty one.
Yeah.
And you see it. I mean, it's no different. I mean, everybody suffers in the summer. That's why they moved the Daytona race to the fall for NASCAR, because it was just too damn hot to be running around in a car that cooped up being 130 degrees inside a race car.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
levels, when you see it getting hot, that's when, that's when it's there. You just got to have the right racing program in place. People will come out to a good race. People will come out to a really good show. Some of our fans are hardened, and they'll be there with ice, sleet, snow, rain, Sahara Desert heat, right? But other people, not so much. It's like we can always count on our diehard fans to be there at any racetrack. But it's always those extra fans that come in that help the bottom line, both in the pits and especially on the front gate, is when you get your non-casual fan to pop in and say hello. So.
Yeah, no doubt. Our man Colin Bell talking about the Mike Parker Memorial and the Alan Ray. And here in just a few minutes, when we talk to Justin Whitehead, obviously that's going to be a topic of conversation. Not only that, but again, a winner once again for him in the factory stocks this past weekend over at Boot Hill. So lots of different things that we'll talk about with Justin about that one. That's going to be a pretty massive one. But before we do that, because right there, what you were talking about, I saw something the other day where you had some folks that were getting pretty animated on X, and we like to touch on those topics because they're relevant. I mean, if they get on X, I mean, it's stuff that people are talking about. It's not just necessarily NASCAR related, but and this is very short track related. That's something that you and I have talked about since this show started, to where I saw the efficiency of a racing program, and I saw that I think it was maybe it was it may have been Bowman Gray. I don't know what it was, but they were talking about how it was 3.5 hour show. It was nice, crisp, clean, entertaining. Everything happened. It was done, and I really think that that's so important right now. I mean, because it when it comes to heat, when it comes to kids, when it comes to everything, attention spans, all of that shit that's going on right now. I think to sit there and drag a show out for 6-7 hours. I mean, I know sometimes it's inevitable when you have these big shows. I mean, that's going to happen. But I think at the same time, you got to be prepared, because you may keep the people at home glued to the TV because you can turn it off or you can go do something else. But I think for folks that are coming in, I mean, you have to have that efficient. And if the folks that like a 6-hour show, they're in the minority. If they get pissed off, that's too bad. But it's got to be clean. It's got to be efficient.
Man, I watched a little bit of racing actually not even racing action. I watched a little bit of Jennerstown to check out their racetrack, because I've seen some good ASA racing in the past from the old ASA series there from Jennerstown. They did a memorial race, and I'm all about the memories and all about that for the memorial races. But they let this guy apparently passed away back in 2020, and they were doing the memorial race for his Charger class that he raced in.
Yeah. And
I feel bad saying this to a certain extent, but it makes the point. They let his sister get up and talk about, him. And she talked minutes, almost 6 minutes, while the guys were waiting behind the stage to be introduced. So she went out for 5 minutes, then went on for 3 or 4 more minutes because he's talking about all the different sponsors, which is great. We need sponsors, and that's all good. Then they did driver introductions, and did an out-of-car picture, and then they had to go strap in the car. So literally for 30 days, because I flipped around and started watching some of the other races on Flight. Dude, after 30 minutes, they finally took the green flag from when I flipped over and the announcer started talking to the sister of the guy. Like, I'm all about memorials, and we're going to talk to Justin about memorials. They serve a certain extent, but at the same time, you have to be cognizant of that show. It cannot upset the flow of that race, because literally for 30 it kept me from watching that race at Jennerstown, because it took 30 damn minutes for the introduction of those cars.
Yeah, man, I'm totally with you. And I get, when it comes to like you said, I mean, the memorial races and all of that. Memorial Day weekend, July 4th. I mean, all of that. That's great. I mean, I totally understand all of that, but it does. I mean, it needs to flow well. It needs to be planned out, and that's a crazy thing about it, is a lot of times when you have a situation like you're talking about, I mean, I'm sure that they had probably talked to that person and they were like, say a few words, but I mean, and that's why a lot of times when I'm in that situation where you have somebody that's going to come up and speak, I'll hold the mic and I'm like, and when they go for the grab, I'll kind of pull back, and it's like, just kind of, go ahead. Because it does. I mean, it drags out. And I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, like you're saying right there, even in sad times, I mean, for very desperate and horrible situations, it's like shit. And it goes like with intermissions. I know, like at the race ranch is kind of a different scenario, because like over there, when I go there, there's the bus. So in my opinion, intermission goes too long, but at the same time, The kids are
came to ride that bus.
The kids came to ride the bus. It's like, Bobby, we get over there, and it's like right before intermission. It's like there's all these kids that come walking up, and they're like, "When's the bus coming out?" or whatever. And then the last couple of feature races, when I go down to interview the winners, there's all these kids. They're like, "When's the bus?" So it's like, it's one of those things to where that's kind of the exception to the rule. But some of these things, when they just go on and on and on, I'm like, shit, come on, man. Let's it's kind of like you said, be cognizant of your customer, because they don't want to sit around with nothing going on.
Yeah, I mean, some of that's a necessary evil. Like when you talk about the bus going, stuff like that, that's a necessary evil because you're trying to find a way. Owen didn't get a bunch of kids club shirts made just to hand out to kids so they can wear to the races. It was more to it than that. That's why they got a school bus. That's why they let him run around, all that good stuff. So let him run around, the drive around the track in the school bus. So that's, there's more because that is the one way of getting, your next generation of fans in there. And not only that, you got to find a way to transition some of those fans into racers. They got to get hooked sometime, and there's two people that have to enjoy that racetrack. The kids have to bug mom and dad to come out there and go to the races, and mom's got to enjoy it too. Yes or no?
That's it. I mean, they have to have a reason to keep coming back, and it really is. It's a good use of that when you're able to do that, because one of the things I throw the word family fun around, and a lot of folks, it's like, well, family fun. I mean, when it comes to racing, family fun is the driver and the mom and the dad and the grown kids or whatever. But it's these days where you're trying to reach out and grab that customer that's not one of these people that have been stalwarts and that have been doing this forever and don't know any different, and they maybe watch cup racing, or maybe they watch Dirt Vision, or they watch something like that. That's the one thing that I'm really finding out that is different now, because for the longest time there would be folks that would come up even to a dirt track and be like, hey, this is NASCAR style racing, being it's in a circle. But there are a lot of folks now that either catch it on Flow or catch it on Dirt Vision, or catch World of Outlaws or High Limits, and they're like, I had no idea that I had a dirt track in Waco, Corpus, Texana, Cotton Bowl, Kennedale. They had no idea. And I think that's the whole thing, where when it comes to dirt racing, which is what we're predominantly doing around here right now, you think about this. If you grow this in the state that it's in right now, it's only going to get better.
Well, think about back in the old Thunder Hill days, right? The only way that a lot of people knew about Thunder Hill was when they first opened, was because the back of those Dr. Pepper cans.
Yep.
Where you got the $2 off. I don't know how Brian and him ever worked that deal out, but that was the way to get people to come in. It was like $2 off an admission, and back then it was like $12. And so you got in for like $10. You brought all your friends, you got your Dr. Pepper. So, that was the way it used to be. Then everybody thought that Thunder Zone was Thunder Hill and all of that when the go-kart track got put in front of there. So it's all about self-awareness, and it gets harder for these racetracks nowadays because there's so much to do. There's only so many people in Edna, Texas, right? It's a town of 5,000 people or so. You're going to get your locals from there. You're going to get the hardest part is pulling people the 30 miles away from Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hardest part. The hardest part about Cotton Bowl, getting people to pull 45 miles from Austin, 75 miles from Temple, what is it, to 150 miles to Waco or whatever it is. So that's the biggest challenge. And every racetrack faces that problem. Every event faces that problem. So it's about self-awareness that you got to try to get those extra people in there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's always a challenge, and these tracks do a really good job. They do a really good job of pulling them in, but that's the whole thing about it, that you got to stay in front of people. That's the biggest thing, and that's where a lot of times where it does suck when the track's off for 2 weeks. Because that right there, that can be a lost customer, because you have to be that in front of them to keep them coming. But anyway, great conversation, and we can dive back in on that and have some more conversation about that. And of course, this dude that's joining us now, he's very well aware of how keeping the customer is important. Customers behind the wheel, customers in the stands when you're promoting. There he is, ladies and gentlemen, Justin Whitehead. How you doing, my man?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Where the hell are you at, dude? You at Top Golf, or the race shop? Okay, that makes a hell of a lot.
I live next to the substation. Next door.
Yeah, no, good thing. Talk about the weekend, man. West Grigsby Memorial there at Boot Hill. You're on top once again. Lots of factory stocks, lots of limited modifieds. Looked like a badass weekend out there, my man.
Oh yeah, Bubba put on a good show like always. Awesome track. Had quite a few cars. It was a real good time.
Love it.
So Justin, talk about the appeal of Boot Hill, man. We just sometimes get amazed. It's like every time they say the word factory stock, it's like 50 show up all the time, sometimes 75. Like I hadn't been there, so maybe I just don't know because I hadn't been there. But what is it about the appeal of Boot Hill? Everybody's got something a little different, but it's all positive to say about Boot Hill.
They just keep things rolling real well. They treat everyone fair. The track's good, obviously. And the tracks around that area all work with each other. You know, there wasn't nobody racing on top of each other. Just like this weekend for my show, everybody's off. You know, everybody's just working together, and you know, it makes for a lot better show that way.
Isn't that really a good thing, Justin? Because I know down south, down here, like this past weekend, you know, Corpus was racing, Pleasanton was racing. I mean, it gets really hard. I mean, because if it's not a big show, you got this amount of cars, and you're trying to put them in different areas in the state. I mean, up to where you guys are, it's so damn big. I mean, you can only do what you can do. I mean, it gets really damn hard when everybody's running at the same time.
It does, as everybody knows. I mean, I'm on both sides of it. Obviously, I sell parts and race cars, and I also race myself, so I know how pricey things are and how much it is to travel to get there. But at the same time, I think other tracks do better racing every weekend versus the ones taking off. You know, like you said, I kind of chimed in there at the end of your conversation talking about taking off, you know, a couple weeks at a time, and you lose the interest sort of, but at the same time, you got to make sure people have money in their pockets to get to the track, obviously.
Amen.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. We talk about it back, 30 years ago, Justin, on pavement. We ran every single weekend from Memorial Day to Labor Day. We didn't run in October. We didn't run in November. We didn't run in February and March. Like, it's like we run so much now. It's like the cost is more than it's ever been, but yet the shows are more spread out. How does that work on your side of this fence, on both sides, selling parts and doing the promotion business? It's like the season's almost too big, but if you cut it shorter, everybody's going to complain. We want more racing. We want more racing.
Yeah, there's really no way to make everybody happy, obviously. Racing more keeps the business up, obviously. That's in the Boot Hill and stuff like that. You know, Boot Hill and Vivian work together very well, and they're in the same areas, so it keeps the cars coming. 67 doesn't get to race as much. We just get a ton of rain here, and it's a very, very low land, so we have a hard time keeping it going. But like you were saying, when I was first started racing, I mean, we ran 25 nights a year. Like, you ran every Saturday night, no question. Like, there wasn't even a thing about being. I think we took off for the fair around here, and that was about it because nobody would show up if you did that.
Yeah.
But it's part of it. I mean, they're making it work. We're just trying to as best we can.
So talking about that, I mean, coming up this weekend, you got the Parker, you got the Alan Roy. Man, this is going to be one hellacious show. It's going to be a big one, and I hate to even say it, but radar is saying whatever it's saying. Kind of, are you even sleeping right now with this?
Good, man. I've got my 10th or 11th year, I think, somewhere around there, and I've just learned that now you just got to play it by ear. And if the forecast ever does look too bad, I usually call it. The last thing I want people to do is waste all their money coming down here, and I really don't want people to waste. Like last year, we were able to run half of it, and then I get tied up. Obviously with the money side of things, it gets good. But I've also called the dang thing, and the weekend be perfect. So, but I also learned the threat of rain is as dangerous as the actual raindrop. If people think it's going to rain, they're going to sit at the house. And I'm guilty too. If I look at a radar and it looks bad, I'm going to sit there and watch it rain. I'm not. Last thing I want to do is go get all my equipment muddy. I know that sounds a little sissy, but
No,
it's still clean.
No, it's dead on.
So, Justin, do you ever find yourself having to give your racing buddies, like, if they start giving the promoter grief about canceling early, canceling too late, stuff like that? From your experience as the promoter side, do you ever just sit there and kind of want to just slap them upside the head and say, listen, guys, cut the promoter a break. It's this XYZ. It's not that simple as just showing up and flipping the light switch on.
I tell them all the time, every race car driver out there should promote at least one event, and they would question things a lot differently than they do now. But, I mean, that's the same with everything. I mean, you go to a restaurant and it takes too long, you start, getting irritated, but you don't know what it's like to run that dang restaurant. So, I mean, it's the same theory. But, yeah, my complaining has went down. My complaining stays now to where I know what people can do to fix things, and they just don't fix them and just keep repeatedly doing the wrong things over and over, which Bubba and Rollo over Boot Hill have learned, and they like something's wrong, they fix it and they move on. Like this weekend, we was done by 11 o'clock both nights, and that's something we're pretty good at, and we try to succeed for is 11:30. I don't like to run much later than that if at all possible.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the magic time to be honest with you, just from what I'm seeing. So Justin, back to this weekend, kind of break that one down for us, man. There's a lot of money on the line, and a lot of hot shoes, man.
A lot of great sponsors have kicked in. I can't even begin to name them all. A bunch of people just kept being super supportive over the deal. Like I said, it's $10,000 to win for both factory and limited. They started just trying to get it for the limited because we combined the Alan Roy deal. So we had the Roys, Adam and Aaron, pitched in and get a lot of help on sponsors they kind of already had. So it kind of made it to that $8,000 mark. And I was like, you know what, man, I want to do 10. And if we're said and done, I had quite a few sponsors. So we decided just to try to make the factory stock 10 as well and try to make it a dual show.
No doubt.
That's a lot. That's a lot of money to race for nowadays. You know, it's funny. Race cars cost a lot of money, but yet $10,000 goes a hell of a long way to help pay for that hobby, doesn't it?
It does, and I know only one person can leave with it. And I usually am a little more down the line with the money, but this time I decided to just kind of stick to the top and left the rest of the purse alone. And but it's still, real good money all the way down. We do have an entry fee. I kind of catch a little slack over that, but I do have to lease the facility I do race at, so it is quite a bit more expensive on me than most races that are getting put on.
Yeah, entry fee means a little skin in the game for drivers, and they need to realize that. So, lastly, man, where do folks go get information for the memorial?
The best place to go is my Facebook page. It is a public page, so go to it. I post 90% of things, and if I don't post them on there, I post them on my Mike Parker Memorial page, but I share them to the to my personal page, so you'll be able to get it.
Yep, gonna be
charge.
No, you're good, man. Gonna be a hell of a show, dude. Thanks for jumping on with us. We'll be keeping track of everything. Congratulations on the weekend, and we'll chat at you again soon, my man.
Oh yeah, thank y'all so much.
You got it, man. Take care.
Yeah,
you bet. There he goes, Justin Whitehead, busy man right there, and that's that conversation right there that we're having with him. It just kind of exemplifies very much what the sport is at the level that we're at. Because I mean, the dude is one of the best shoes that you're going to find, and at the same time, he's promoting, building cars, working on cars, has customers, and all of that. And it's like that is what this is right now. I mean, that very much Justin Whitehead is very much what we do at the moment.
I mean, I don't know. You say that we've talked about it before, that racers make the best promoters because they understand about the racers, right? But the problem is that you still have to be cognizant of the people on the other side of that fence that are sitting underneath the press box. Yep. They play an integral part of the bottom line of a racetrack. If one side is full and one side is empty and vice versa, that racetrack doesn't end up in the black. It ends up in a lot of red. And when there's way too much red, you know what red means on a red flag? It means stop. That's probably what can happen to a racetrack. If there's not enough people in the stands and not enough cars in the pits, that red comes out and it means stop. And none of that we want. We don't want to see it anywhere. But I think that there's some advantages to having a promoter that used to be a racer, helps out with the racer side, but sometimes having the promoters be cognizant of the race fans, I think helps out a whole hell of a lot too, because it's the yin and the yang. They're not completely opposite, but yet they're both very, very important to the show. You have to have race cars, you have to have fans in the stands to be able to pay for the cars to show up. So it's a mutual thing that's pretty damn important on both sides of that fence.
And I think that's a great question that you asked him right there, because that's one of the things that when you have these guys that are putting on races, that are doing these things, to where it the whole factor with odds are that if you're promoting a racetrack, if you're promoting a race, you have probably been doing this for a long time, and you have a lot of friends, or maybe not friends, or whatever you want to call it. But you have a lot of what's the word that I'm looking for? You have a lot of people that you've been acquaintances that you've been dealing with for a long time, and when you get in that spot, I think it's extremely hard. And HE at Cotton Bowl is one that one of the first times that when he assumed that role there, where he's like, I see the cars, I see the car numbers, but I block out who it is. And that's one of those things to where there's family racing there, there's grandkids, there's all of that. But I really think that you have to do that. Ricky Brooks does that really well. Tim Bryant does that really well on the asphalt side, to where they get in there and it's like, it doesn't matter who it is. I mean, if something's wrong, you got to call them out. If they got to get thrown out, they get thrown out. And I think that's really tough. That's really tough because I mean, I can say, that, oh, hell, I'd be like that. But if I was in that situation and I had to disqualify you, I'd be like, oh, man. And Jack Sandifer would always be like, he'd walk over and he'd put that armor and he's like, man, we're friends, I love you, but I'm sorry. and man, that's a tough pill to swallow when you're put in that spot.
Well, I think the crazy part is that was the one advantage I had when I got to do the race director there at Mobile that time, is I didn't know a soul. I knew a handful of truck drivers and I knew a handful of the legacy drivers, right? So other than getting to meet Dave Mader there in the drivers meeting after it was over, that's I didn't know enough people to where it really was just car numbers. And it was just a way to say, number 15, calm down. Number 15, black flag for war, or point the flag at him, a warning for rough driving or whatever it was. So it's sometimes it's an advantage to just not know anybody, but then on the other side, when he's got the acquaintances like he's got, it makes people want to race for him because you want to go race and support your buddy, right? So I think it's a blessing and a curse that he's got, to where he's such an influential person in the racing world, especially up in that Arklatex region. Yeah. Being a car builder, being a promoter, being a racer, all that good stuff. Like, he's known on all three fronts, and that's, he's an integral part of that, what makes that ecosystem work up there in the Arklatex region.
And I think a lot of it is that's really where you find out. I mean, because people for somebody like Justin, yes, and Rob, man, coming up or supposed to be. We're using for every race that is supposed to be going on this weekend. We are definitely going to be saying supposed to be, because we've kind of been, we're just kind of shooting you guys straight, which we always do. That it's could be kind of tough depending on your location. But I think it's one of those things to where say whatever you want to say about. In this case, like talking about Justin Whitehead, the fact that he's putting that race on, and you can probably get, even who, the biggest rival there that he has. I mean, they may not like each other, whatever may, but there is the respect factor, and I think that's when it comes to making calls on the racetrack and having to do that and having to make those are business decisions right there, because it's one of those things to where kind of the knee-jerk response that you hear from drivers when they get thrown out, it's, well, I'm never coming back. And then they do. And it always happens. We've always done that. But I think that's one of those things to where you have somebody that's tenured in there so long that you do have the respect. And maybe, maybe folks don't like them. We had that conversation when we talked about Neil Upchurch. Remember, we talked to him before he passed, and all of these guys, so many of these TIDA guys that we talked to, and even some of the pro sedan guys, to where it was like, man, I couldn't stand that fucking dude, but damn, he put on a good show. Man,
he knew how to do it, right?
Yeah.
They may not have liked him, but they did respect his authority most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole thing. And you hear that with folks. Ricky Ware Sr. It's one of those things to where Ricky would make the call or whatever he was going to do. And you just, you own it, and it is what it is. Because that's the person that's giving you the opportunity to get out there and do what you're doing. And I think that, it really does. It drives me crazy that people want to beat up on the promoters, because it's a thankless job. And again, we're going down another rabbit hole here that comes up all the time on this show. But when you talk to guys that are putting on, this race, $10,000 to win, two different classes. Just think about that. That is going to be, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about, about an efficient show. When you get into that situation, it's really hard to be efficient, because shit's going to happen.
Well, but going into that's not going to be an efficient show.
Exactly.
Going in that there's an ass load of cars, and that you're going to be sitting there for a hot minute if you're in the grandstands. You're going to be sitting in the cars waiting on your heat a hot minute if you're in the driver's seat, right? So I really think that I think you have different expectations. When people go to the race ranch and Edna, down at Texana, they get spoiled by the efficiency at which Owen runs a show. Because you're in and out usually by if we go to catastrophe that happened, but they're usually done by 10 o'clock, which is fine. We've determined that 3 to 3.5 hours is the magic number for a normal show. Mm-hmm. Now, when you get into these great big shows, these $10, $20, $30,000 to win shows, it's going to have more cars. You're going to have more action, more heat races, more LCQs, stuff like that. So you got to condition yourself to know on a big show, you're probably going to be there double the amount of time. The show starts at 7. You're probably going to be there till 11, 12 o'clock at night, if not 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing about it, that really you set that expectation. I mean, it's more, I think it's more when we talk about efficient shows and people having to hang around and grumpy kids and whatever the case, it is definitely more on the weekly show, because there's really not a reason that, if you're running 5, 6 classes, whatever, with moderate car counts, let's say that you're not getting into B mains and all of that in a regular weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever the hell you want to call it show. I mean, you should. It should turn pretty quick. But when you get into these, like this one, that's coming up, and the one that they just had, their Boot Hill. I mean, these are going to be ones, they're going to take some time. And I think that's where people understand that. And I think that's a cool part when you get people in and then they come back for a big show, that they realize that it's going to just take a little bit of time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, going in, you have to condition your race fans for it. You got to say, all right, here's a big show coming up. The words big show equal longer show generally. And I think your hardcore race fans know that, and your general race fans, there's a lot of deals about social media. Social media is probably the greatest thing in spreading the word about certain events that are coming up the pipe, right? The bad news is it's spreading it spreads that disease a little bit when somebody gets cold, gets my old hot dog analogy, a cold hot dog, or the too many jalapenos on the nacho thing from our buddy KR. So it's I don't know. I mean, there's got to be a really good happy medium on the events and show. Now, sometimes, if you're used to that, sometimes it doesn't matter. You're used to coming in at midnight or leaving at midnight, and that, hey, look, we know going in, we're going to be there at midnight, but the average fan probably is not going to stay that late.
Yeah. Great point right here from our man, Trey. And Trey, thinking about you, brother. Hope all is well. Got home from Corpus by 2 a.m. with a 4-hour drive. Couldn't ask for anything better. And that's where, a lot of times I get on that fence when it's for me, whether it's at Corpus or Houston or whatever the case, where it's like, okay, we're done at 10:30. I mean, maybe I'll go home, but then there's that's that beer thing that Tim was talking about that kind of throws that off. But I mean, that's perfect. I mean, that's absolutely perfect when it comes to wanting to pull one of these things off, and it makes the customers happy. They have a good time and they want to come back. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, I'm spoiled at Texana. We're usually done by 10 o'clock. I stay around in the pits for a little bit, maybe an hour or so. And then get on the highway, and 2 hours later, 1 or 2 o'clock, I'm back at the house. So, other than when I try to overindulge and stay a little too late in the pits, and I get back at like 3 or 4 in the morning, but that's on me. That's not on the racetrack, right? Like you always say, if I want to be at the racetrack at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's usually my decision, not because I'm sitting there watching the show.
That's it. I want to do it on my own accord. If I want to be sitting there, I want to do it because I want to do it. I don't want to be in the grandstands or behind a microphone sitting there trying to do all that. Great conversation right there. We can continue to dive into that. That's one that never goes bad. I mean, that's something, how to refine a racing program in constructive ways. And that's why I like having these conversations, because we can be constructive to where it's just not like, oh, it sucked or whatever. So anyway, take a look right here. Diving in as we get to our second guest this evening here on the Revved Up Sports Show. Winner again. This dude always wins. Checking in with us once again, it is our man Cody Leonard. Cody, how you doing, brother?
I'm good today. How about you?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Talk about the weekend, man. I was down south, and of course, man, before we talk about your race, talk about the car count with Stems, man. Talk about blowing the gates out of 37, man. Y'all were jam-packed.
Yeah, the STEM series is actually, it's been, it's really picked up the mod car count, around the area. The last, year, maybe last 2 years, the car count's kind of struggled, and being divided, around the South Texas area, it gets kind of tough. But the series has kind of brought all the tracks together, all the cars together, and it's been striving. It's been good.
Mhm.
Yeah, Cody, it seems like the when the stems first got announced, there's a lot of like questions. Is this going to work? Are the guys going to travel? Is it really legitimate? Is this series legitimate? I think in the first 6 or 7 races, the handful of races it's been there, I think the series has answered all of those questions in a positive manner and delivered on every single race. The couple that I got to call at Texana were fantastic. I mean, you got to win. I got to watch part of the one at I-37 with you guys racing down there. So as a competitor in a series, has it lived up to the expectation at which you thought it was going to?
I believe so. A lot of a lot of these new series, there's a lot of like worry coming into it. A lot of questions on how it's going to work, how it's going to happen, and it's kind of typical with this new series coming around. But I think it's really played up to what they wanted it to be, and I think it's working out amazing.
So, Cody, I am kind of curious, and again, I don't want to jinx anything that's happening right now with stems, man, because it's circled on the calendar whenever you guys come into town. But you kind of mentioned right there with the modifieds, they had kind of fallen off at different tracks and so forth. And then with the series, when that came out, it's like, okay, here's a unified effort. You guys are racing damn near every week. So
Yeah.
how is that? I mean, even on a bad night, there's still 15 cars, man. I think it's just maybe new excitement, new blood, that's bringing guys out.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a lot of these guys around here. There's a lot of guys that they're hardcore with their mods. They're kind of dedicated to them, and they stick with them. And I think bringing all the tracks together, it kind of unifies them to one track, and it shows with the car count. We've kind of struggled, getting to some races just due to scheduling, with late model and whatever else we got going on, work and so on and so forth. But I think just with all the guys that can make it and that are, dedicated to just the mod alone, it's worked out, in their part, and it's doing great.
Mm-hmm.
So, Cody, a couple weeks ago, you got the big win over Cotton Bowl in the late model. And when I talked to you and Bo at Texana, I guess 6-8 weeks ago now, you were talking about how sometimes the late model has to be all about momentum, and you got to do it with the crates, got to get them wound up to get around the racetrack. Not so much that problem at Cotton Bowl, but talk about driving that modified. Is that something you got to wait on? Is it momentum, or is it just, you hit that loud pedal and that son bitch takes off? Is that what it's like driving one of those compared to a late model?
Yes, it's not as momentum based. I say the late models are momentum based, but when you get a track like Cotton Bowl, it does take a lot of that away. When you get the black slick racetracks, it's still there's a lot of throttle input needed. But going back to a modified, there's a lot more throttle control between the two. I think mainly to do with a lot less spoiler, a lot less tire. The suspensions, they're pretty darn close. So it's not a suspension issue. It's just there's the difference in tire and the difference in spoiler. It's just the mods. They're a little bit more of a handful just because of how they're set up.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to ask you there about the late models, especially after that Cotton Bowl race, because that was, we're talking about kind of the rejuvenation of modifieds and some unity and all of that. And I really like that. I wish we had another late model race like this week or next week, because it seems like the late models are kind of doing the same thing around here, man.
Yeah, they're starting to pick up. I wish we could pull a little more of the North cars, but being the size of Texas and Oklahoma or Louisiana cars, it's a trek to get down here for them to even race. But I think the popularity of them's picking up, and it's showing in the area. And the races have been pretty good, I think. So hopefully it continues to grow, and maybe we can get a few more races.
No doubt.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the dirt fans obviously have the appeal of the sprint car, but I think that the big mods have made a comeback, and the late models too. And Rodney and I see it as the announcers. You get the vibe from the fans, and it's like when you see that 4-wide salute in the Stems car, you get that crowd fired up, and you can feel their fun and excitement. It's like they understand. They're your first timers. You got a E-mod, you got a limited mod, you got a big mod. They all kind of half-ass look the same with the open wheels, but yet when you see them on the racetrack and you see them compete, that's when you can tell the big difference between a big mod and an E-mod. But I think that they definitely have the fans have really caught on to the fact that these IMCA modifieds or big mods, whatever we want to call them, have really taken and found their home. These fans are coming. These fans are packed. How do you feel about that from a competitor standpoint? Is that something you can feel?
Yeah, I mean, you can notice it, especially like, pulling out on the track at I-37. You go right by the grandstands, and you see a lot of the excitement, all the waves, and so on and so forth. And then even like the four wide salute, you're usually looking up at the grandstands waving, or just kind of looking around, and you see a lot of it, and you see the excitement with the fans. And I think I think a lot of that may be with like the series. I think it's kind of taken just the weekly racing away from them, so they don't get the excitement like throughout the weekly event. So when they do come to town, it's a little more exciting for them, just because they don't get to see them as often.
I think that's a really big deal. I mean, I think just the fact that it's a touring series, and the fact that you guys go to multiple racetracks. I mean, I think that's a really big thing, where folks are like, oh man, I mean, it's a tour coming into town. So this past weekend for you at 37, obviously the win right there, like we were talking about, man, lots and lots of race cars out there. Kind of take us through the weekend, kind of how it started. Obviously, it ended up really good in victory lane, but it's never as easy as that victory lane picture that you get at the end of the night.
Yeah, man, I'll be honest, we struggled early on. We went out for hot laps, and I think it was a complete different track than I kind of imagined it was going to be. Um, I didn't feel terrible, and I kind of figured, you know what, I'll leave the car as is and see what happens in the heat race. And I think we were so far out in left field, it was ridiculous. But we came back to the pits, and we got our heads together. We kind of went back to some old stuff that we were doing, and just kind of took a shot in the dark. And I think it worked out. We kind of got the car back to where we kind of like it, where it used to be. And it worked out in our favor. It was a fun race. It was real low, slow. A lot of throttle control, and that's the kind of racing that I like personally.
No doubt.
So Cody, talk about that as a dirt track racer. When you have to you only get so many laps of hot laps to try to dial it in, and then you go out and you're like, what the hell do we do? I don't understand it. How hard is that to mentally change I mean, is it one of those things where you put your heads together, you get the right setup, you're like, okay, this is good? Or is it like, for you as a driver, do you just have to shake your head and like, okay, wait a minute, let's just go back to ground zero and try to start this thing from the bottom? That just seems like, to me, as somebody that's only done a handful of dirt races, done more asphalt than dirt, it just seems like that, at least with the asphalt, you get consistency. When it's hot as hell in the summertime, that track's going to be slick and greasy. You don't necessarily know what you're going to get when it's hot and greasy at a dirt track.
Yeah, I think with years of experience, you start to pick up on what tracks are going to do, especially if you ran them a few times. So it kind of helps, with past experience at I-37. But you are able to start to read the dirt here in Texas, and you can almost tell what's going to happen at most places. And I mean, you can get kind of a basis whenever you go out in hot laps. I know some guys, they don't even like to hot lap, which, I mean, it's understandable, but I like to go out there personally just to see what kind of base I have, and just what I can adjust on, just to make myself better for the heat race, and try some things in the heat. And sometimes, I mean, if you can get into just like a transfer position, like for the stems, for example, you got to get into the top four. So if you can try some things, get in the top four, you're in the redraw, you got a good chance of redrawing 1 through 12. So I mean, you can try some things in the heat, and then if it don't work out, you know where to go from there, and then you can try some more stuff in the feature, and hopefully you get a good draw.
Cody, that's always a weird thing for me. The times that I've gotten to race dirt, where it's like, okay, I'm a pavement guy. We would sit there. We were there all damn day, and we'd go out and practice about 4 times before I ever got on the track. Hell, I run 100 laps, And the thing is, when it comes to dirt, it's like you get 3 or 4 laps to get out there and tell me this part. So the weird part is, so if you're in hot laps, you get out, you mentioned reading the dirt, and I still don't understand that. I try that, and I'm like, looks like dirt. I don't understand unless it rubbers up. But like, you go out in hot laps, and it's like, okay, I'm going to adjust. But then the thing is, when you get back out an hour later, it's a totally different track, man. It is a science what you guys do.
Yeah, it's pretty tricky, but like I said, you get kind of used to it over time, and you get to a point where you can read a track fairly decent, enough to get you in a ballpark. But like you said, trying to read a track, you go out there for say intermission or something, or even just watching, you can kind of start to notice the change in dirt color, and you can see where where it's starting to slick off, and where it's starting to take rubber, which usually, I mean, it's going to be slick before it ends up rubbering. So, I mean, you can tell a difference in dirt color, and even sometimes just watch dust particles pop up, and you can see where the track's changing and what it's doing.
It's crazy.
That's
Absolutely.
crazy. Hell, I've never understood how dirt racers start the night out going the wrong way, and then they get faster going the right way as the night's over, right? Like I've never understood that, right? Even after being around dirt racing for 4 or 5 years now. So, talk about asphalt racing, dude. Any indication, any desire to follow Jared Moppin over to HMP, get yourself a truck ride, or you take your factory stock over there to run on the pavement over there in Houston?
Man, I've always thought about it, in years past, and even recently. But I've had I think I got 4 races total on asphalt when they did the limited
Okay.
the town series.
Yep.
Um, we did some things there, and we weren't the quickest car. I think I had 2 seconds with the series out of 4 starts, which it wasn't bad. But me and my dad, he had some past asphalt experience, and we had some help with the Miklinchek family, and I think we were in a ballpark, but we didn't really know what we were doing, so it's it was just kind of a touch and go thing. But if I had the opportunity to, I would give it a shot. I'm not against it. But I mean, at some point, maybe if I can talk my dad into it, we may take the factory.
There you go. I do want to ask you, talk about the stock cars, man. Man, I love those. And obviously, the other weekend there at Cotton Bowl, another great run for you. Those just seem like, I mean, I mean, understand factory stocks and all that, but I've always said that if I could run anything consistently, I'd want to run an IMCA stock car. Those, goddamn, man, those just seem like a ton of fun.
Yeah, I got this car. I think it was like 2 years ago, and you know, I I just kind of I started working on it pretty thoroughly, and then I got to a point to where I had to start changing some things around, and I lost motivation in it. And it's a series where, I mean, it's a class that I've always wanted to run, and I don't know why I got into that funk, but I just like I don't. I had to start changing some body parts around just because the IMCA came out with some things that weren't legal, which is what I was,
Mm,
kind of working with. And then I had to back to like the Monte Carlo front end. It was just a Camaro front end, but I had to revert back to the Monte Carlo. And then by the time I had got back to that point, it was just like, man, I got too much going on with the mod and the factory and, whatever else we had going on at that point. It's like, man, I had to put it off to the side. And then, there was a time where winter time around here, it wasn't very long. So with what
yeah.
we had around the house, we had too much, to even think about getting the stock car ready. But I finally just gave up, and I gave in, and I worked my butt off through this off season to get it done. And man, it's one of my favorite classes. I've had a blast trying to learn it. It's a different driving style.
Yeah.
And it's been a learning curve for me, and I think we're getting there. I had a good run going at Cotton Bowl, but we're still having some brake issues. It At Waco, the first night out, it spun the right rear brake caliper around. It broke the wells on the bracket.
Damn.
Uh, so we got it tacked up just to make it through that night, just to learn some, and we got it all fixed up and ready to go. We went to Cotton Bowl, and I was fighting for the lead, and then we had a late race caution. I ended up losing brake pressure in the rear, and the car started getting real tight. So we're still chasing out some bugs with the brakes, and I think once we figure it out, we'll be pretty good.
So, Cody, you kind of led me into my next question about you talk about driving styles. You're one of those guys, like a few other ones out there, that race every damn thing. Every class you can, you race cars for other people. You have your own stuff, all that, and you race a little bit of everything. Driving style wise, how hard is it to how hard is it to go from a stock car to a late model to an IMCA modified? Do you change that much? Is it all of just learning throttle control, learning the cars? Talk about how you have to change your whole mindset, switching cars like that.
Yeah, you got to kind of mentally prepare yourself when you're strapping into the next one. You got to think of throttle pickup points or lift points and so on and so forth. I mean, the driving aspect, you kind of get your driving style down, and it kind of just comes to you. But you got to pick up on how hard you're driving in, how hard you're braking, or how hard you're you're on throttle on exit, just little things like that. There was a big one. I think we were at Texana with the late model and the factory, two complete different, and this was when we had the open motor in it, so it was two complete different animals. And we'd go run the late model feature, and you're hard on the throttle, a lot of speed down the straightaways, and you're pitching it off in the corner, and then you get out of that thing, go strap into a factory stock. It's like a big boat, and
Yeah.
you're going down the straightaways, and you feel like you could just like look around and almost like text and drive or something. It's just they're so slow that you just feel like you can do whatever you want in the cockpit. But you kind of learn over time how to adjust with between each car.
Yeah. So Cody, we're past the midway point right here now in the summertime. Obviously with stems, great season you're having there. What all are you guys thinking? I mean, stock car, you guys going to take that on the road? I mean, factory stock. There's always a damn factory stock race. So I mean, there's always that. I mean, hell, I've seen you guys with the late model outside of the state. I mean, so what's what's kind of the thought for you guys here as we kind of get to big race season?
Man, we don't have a set in stone schedule. We just kind of take it as we go. I think eventually we're gonna start looking around and maybe just see what's available. If there's some mod shows, we'll take the mod. If there's a big factory, big factory stock show, we may get a wild hair and take it out for a spin. I kind of wait on Swinson, the Chris Swinson. I wait for him to tell me what he wants to do with the late model, and I just kind of answer the call. I'm thankful enough for that opportunity to have that deal. With the last one at I-37, we were invited to Super Nationals for the All Star deal. You got to run the time trials to try to lock into the All Star race up there at the Super Nationals. So we're contemplating whether we want to go. Looking at it expense wise, and then I got some things to try to move around at work. To make it available for me. But that's one that we're looking forward to or trying to do. So. But like I said, we don't really have anything set in stone, so it's just kind of whatever pops up and whatever is to our liking.
That's the way to do it.
I got one last for you, Cody. So I want to talk about the factory stock. It blows my mind that a car that is as well, I say as stock, using air quotes as a factory stock, every time we turn around, there's another $10,000 to win race, 20,000, 30. There's that $50,000 to win race coming up at Boot Hill, I think, or is that Mod Wars? Anyway, the person in the win for these factory stocks is crazy. What's the allure of that class? Is it still that $50 asphalt pull-off tire? Is it the big purses? I mean, what makes the factory stock so damn popular?
I couldn't really answer that question. It's not really a class that piques my interest, the most. We've had the car and that's what we've been running. So, if we see a show, we'll go. I think it might just be the cost of the car versus what the payouts are here recently. I mean, a lot of guys, they get into the factory stocks just because of the big money shows that are coming up, and they've been picking up more and more each year. So I think most guys are probably going back to factory stocks just because of the payouts. It's a lot of the upper classes. The, like say, limiteds or the modifieds, late models. You don't see these big shows like you see with the factory stocks here. And cost wise it's a pretty good argument. Say like late models or something. Tires and car equipment and so on and so forth. But I think cost versus payouts is probably the biggest thing with factory stocks. I think it just piques most people's interest.
Lastly, Cody, kind of to back up Bobby's question right there, and you can answer this however you want to answer it. I mean, I mean, I watch you race, and you were, I mean, finesse. I mean, it's very, man, you're just so smooth everything you do. I mean, some of these factory deals, I mean, they turn into not quite that. I mean, you get done, and guys don't have any freaking sheet metal left on the car. I mean, is that a little bit of maybe the factory stock? I'll do it if it's there. It's very rough at times.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of the races, they kind of turn into demo derbies at times, and that kind of gets on your nerves because you feel like even you may be front of the pack, mid pack, back of the pack. It don't matter where you're at. You could be getting raced for sixth place and you'll still get doored, and they're just they're driving over their heads. They're running people's equipment over, and it gets kind of irritating. And I'm not a huge fan of the slick tire. I know most people are fans of it, but I hadn't been a good, I'm not a big fan of the tire personally, but I think a lot of the rough driving kind of shies some guys away, like me personally.
Yeah, no doubt. Cody, I tell you what, man, you are a great wheelman. We look forward to seeing you again. So where are you supposed to be this weekend? We're kind of saying weather, but what are you supposed to be doing this weekend?
I'm actually on call at work, sadly.
Oh,
Yeah. So that's got my priority right now. I'll probably be sitting at home. If we had something local like Corpus, I usually try to, I'll make the trip out there and I'll take the chance of racing. And if I get called into work or something, I'll head over. But, we have like a 2-hour policy to where if we get called out, we gotta be there within 2 hours. So that takes a lot of the racetracks around here out. So this weekend, with weather and work, we'll be sitting at home watching.
good weekend to be on call, my man. Good
weekend
to be on call.
No doubt.
Congratulations on another one there. I saw Logan call you the Stims mayor. That's kind of what it's seeming like with you guys. So
I don't know. He's got me beat by a long shot, but hopefully we can start getting a few more races, and that's one that we actually do have scheduled. Is I believe next weekend at Corpus. Yeah, we've had some decent runs this year, but I think I've personally been struggling to put them together. I had a pretty big driver error the last time they came to Corpus, so hopefully we can change that around.
Yeah. Good one coming up. June 29th will be the date right there at the South Texas Race Ranch. Cody, thanks for taking the time, my man. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Always a pleasure seeing you in Victory Lane. Congratulations on another one, dude, and we'll do it again soon.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.
Yes, sir. Y'all too.
You got it. There he goes. Cody Leonard. Oh, man. Isn't he just he's as smooth doing interviews as he is on the track, man. Just great young talent right there. We got so many guys like Cody around here, him and Jared and all of these. I mean, not to discount the older guys or anything like that, but man, when you look and you think about the future of the sport and you got guys like Cody Leonard, it's like, man, we're in really good hands. We are in really good hands.
Yeah, I think we are. I think we're in a good spot with some of these seasoned veterans of the younger style guys. And so it's like they have the desire and passion, and they've got the ability. So that leads to pretty successful concoction there when you're trying to come up with the next generation of racer. That they'll be the statesman, and it's so funny how far they come. Back in the day when we first started the show 8.5 years ago or so, like, the idea of coming on to a show and talking, like even the kids that were, good on social media and would talk to you in the pits, they were like, I can't do the show. I can't do the show. Now it's like we get to talk to them. He sounded just like he did when I talked to him in the pits there at Texana. So I think that it's a pretty good deal to see these guys not only develop themselves on a racetrack, but also develop themselves, with this whole media thing we got.
It's a big part of it, man. It's a really big part of it. When I've said it, getting to talk to young people, it's like, I mean, seriously, Bobby, I get to race, once or twice a year. And right now that only happens because of this show. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, wow, my great ability gets me back behind the wheel. Bullshit. People want me to get in a car because I'll come on here and talk about it and we'll make a big deal about it. And I think that's which, by the way, there's going to be some news, I think, in a couple of weeks about maybe another opportunity. But it's one of those things to where it's like it's so important to and handle yourself well and talk to the crowd. And I got to tell you one of the best pieces of advice. I mean, and by the way, happy Father's Day to all the dads. That was yesterday. I was about to talk about my dad, his birthday yesterday. It was one of those things when I first started racing, we would get done over there at Austin. I'd sit over there and grab these beer cans like I'm doing here on the show. And it would be like, he would always tell me, he's like, if a kiddo walks up and wants you to sign a program or something, put that damn beer can down. Set that beer can down. Go over there and talk to that kid because, they're they think you're doing something right. And I think that's super important for young drivers now, and even old drivers, because some of the old dogs are the ones that are worse. It's like, man, respect those fans and enjoy that moment because you're something special to somebody.
That's right. I was fixing to say, you're in somebody's eyes, you're their hero for that night.
Yep.
And we can't forget that. It doesn't matter if you're a male, female driver, something like that, you're somebody's hero that night, and you got to live up to those expectations when the fans come into the pits, and even when you go into the grandstands. Don't act like an asshole when you get up in the grandstands. If you're taking a break and wanting to watch the rest of the racing match, if a kid comes up, wants an autograph, you're trying to watch the race, take the time, sign that shirt, sign that hero card, sign that checkered flag, because that is what it takes to continue to keep the sport to growing.
Yeah, give them a couple of words. I mean, just tell them something. You're going to make their night, and it's going to be a really cool thing. And that'll bring them back. I mean, that'll bring them back, because you may not be Jeff Gordon, but they sure as hell think you are that day. So really cool to do that right there. Got a topic that popped up on the chat right there as Cody was on, so we'll jump into that here in just a little bit. But before we do that, also do want to talk about a little NASCAR. I got to talk about Iowa, because hell, we had an entertaining race yesterday. But before we do that, Cody Leonard is one of those drivers that is on the ODS team, the on-demand shirts team, which Bobby and I are. Obviously, we're sporting our gear, and we have all of that. So on-demand shirts, they will take care of you. Drivers like Cody Leonard, J.J. Jennings, Stephen Whitaker, obviously James Cole, Joe Medea. The list goes on and on and on. It is our friends at On Demand Shirts. A quick word from the great folks in San Antonio. Absolutely. They are more than shirts. They are on-demand shirts, koozies, all kinds of cool stuff. Caps, they will take care of you. Check them out, ondemandshirts.com. Also, a quick word about our friends, or my buddy Tom McKay at Audiovisual Consultations. So you can see a little bit of difference behind me right now. I got a weather wall back here behind me, and then the NBA Finals are looking really, really good over there to that side. But your home theater system, whatever you're looking for, whether it's one screen, two screens, three screens, whatever, a Sonos sound system, Tom McKay and his folks are here in Round Rock. They will actually come in and hook you up. Race fans, let me tell you something. I watched last night at Iowa, watching that on that massive 75-inch. It's over there, and it was just unbelievable, the sounds and all that. It's Tom McKay, avconsultations.com, 512-255-8678. They'll come to your place. Doesn't matter if you don't have to be in the Round Rock or Austin area. Get a hold of Tom, and he will come and take care of you himself. It's AV Consultations. Bobby, here's what I wanted to talk about, and this was Gabe that was checking in. Let me see if I can find it. Oh man, I lost it. It was about the cost of racing. And we talk about this a lot. And I think just what you were talking about right there, the hot button topic that you brought up there to Cody Leonard, the cost of race cars these days, factory stocks, 15K plus, modifieds, 20K, and on the low side for some of that stuff. I don't really have an issue with those numbers on a modified, because that's kind of like with pavement, with pro late models and with modifieds and all of that. You expect that. Super late models, I don't even want to go down that road. We need to have Max Kayas on here, and we can talk about those dollars and cents. But I mean, with the factory stock money, I mean, kind of something right there. I saw what you were doing with Cody, where you were talking about because I say it all the time. It's like, okay, here's the rules. How damn they're fast. How they do that. And it's like the cost is, we can bitch about cost, but they're everywhere. They're everywhere right now, factory stocks.
Well, and the big money races are everywhere. I mean, like we said, a 5 years ago, a $5,000 to win show was the norm. Hell, now it's like a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 show for factory stocks is a big show and becoming normal. So it's just unbelievable that cars that are supposed to be that stock are A, that fast, and B, that damn competitive between so many guys. You show up at a factory stock race at Boot Hill, there's 10 guys that have a shot at winning that damn thing.
Yeah. And it is one of those things. What I do like about the factory stocks is, and this is kind of the whole conversation that's been a talking point with trying to get with the HMP stock cars, factory stock, bootlegger, whatever you want to call them. Where with Owen, in that case, the promoter, what he wanted to do was allow the factory stocks to come on out. But what you're trying to avoid at the same time is to where you get, I mean, what we used to have in Texas, where you had the purpose-built asphalt stock car. In my opinion, to kill the street stocks and super stocks around here. I mean, when those things went from, with the, front stubs, I mean, fine, put weight jacks in the front. I mean, or put weight jacks in the back, whatever. I mean, that's cost saving stuff. I mean, these tubular A arms and all of that. I mean, that's cost saving. You can't find that shit anymore. That's totally good. But when the shock packages and all that got out of control, I mean, that's really where it used to be one of those things to where you would talk to racers in the old days, Gabe, because this is back to your question. And apparently you know this because I see what you're saying right there about signing autographs and so forth. Is it used to be, okay, I'm going to get a big motor, and maybe you drop some money on the big motor, good bottom end or stroker motor, whatever the case is. Somebody got smart and figured out how to do shocks. And it's a hell of a lot easier to change shocks than change motors. And that's just been massive. It's been massive.
When everywhere, every class now has a shock package, unless you have either A, a claim class, or B, some kind of only stock shocks, right? It's these classes that have the unlimited budgets of stocks. I mean, we see it everywhere from a dwarf car to a mod light to a super asphalt late model. Like, amazing how far shocks have come to where now you have guys that are in the shock business, specializing in more than just, Penske shocks, or AutoZone or Auto Shack shocks, as the case may be, back when you were racing back in the day, because they had a lifetime warranty. You roughed them up on a race, you took the some bitches back, swapped them out for a new pair.
Yeah. You always take them back. I mean, just take them back and swap them out. I mean, it was one of those things I remember, in the late 80s, I think it was. We were at a San Antonio race meeting and the shock thing came up, and David Sevilla, was one of the racers back in those days. And he's like, hey, man, my Steady Rider shocks, from, I guess, was Sears or Montgomery Wards or whatever the hell that was back in the day, is like, those days are gone. But it really is. I mean, the cost, it gets. I think that I'd have a lot more ground, I think, and a better platform to bitch about the cost of racing when it comes to factory stocks if there were only 7 or 8 at a weekly show. But hell, I mean, a weekly show, I mean, you're 15. I mean, it's I don't really have a leg to stand on if I want to sit here and complain about it, but what I do like about the factory stocks is that, I mean, I like a lot of things about them, but you've got the really good ones. You've got the ones that are precision built and purpose built. But at the same time, I like in the factory stocks that you do have the regular, just what the intent of it is. You do still have some of those, and those guys still come out, and that's great. That's great that they're still a part of this blow up that we're seeing.
Well, and some of those guys are pretty damn competitive too with those home built race cars.
Absolutely.
I'm not talking about the home built race cars that were the guys manufacture them all day long. I'm talking about home built inside a garage, piece by piece driveway. Not on a solid flat surface. You got the guys welding their cars together in the pothole driveway and stuff like that. So those are the guys that those are the guys that you like to see, your homegrown heroes, if you will. Backyard warriors, as we used to call them.
Man, no doubt about it. I mean, that's the way you do it right there. I mean, that's some of the best times. I mean, we would sit out there and hammer away and work on that damn car out. I mean, if it rained, it was like, oh shit, it's gonna sit out in the driveway. I mean, that was one of those things. I mean, it was like the jig. That's the funny thing about it is it's like nowadays when you're gonna build one of these chassis, it's like, okay, we're gonna put it on a jig. Back in the old days when you would try to fix a car or for that matter try to build one of these stock cars, it was like your jig was 4 jack stands. you put that sumbitch on there, and then depending on what you were going to do, if you were going to try to do some cross or something in the backside, I mean, you lowered a jack stand, and then that's where you would go in, and that's where you would do whatever you were going to do. And if you're going to start moving shit, in the front end, start moving, do stuff with spring buckets and all that, you had it up on 4 jack stands, and you got in there and did it that way. I mean, a very different time and a very different place these days. But I mean. Yeah, spending. I mean, it's just a different era, man. It's a different era from what we used to do back in those days.
Well, I think it's like one of the first guys locally around us that got a jig was Terry James.
Yeah.
He was one of the first guys to use some of that spiller connection and got himself a chassis jig to build those super late models. And then he thought, well, hell, if we're building super late models, we might as well build a couple of badass street stocks, super stocks. And it kind of went from there. But I mean, the day, like you said, the days of going to a junkyard are done for anything other than, say, a 4-cylinder.
Mm-hmm.
Or even a Crown stock. But hell, even Crown Vics are getting harder to find nowadays to do a Crown stock kind of deal. So, it becomes a challenge where, like, people complain about everything being purpose built now and everything flip the catalog instead of go out in the junkyard. About you can't find that stuff anymore at a junkyard. There ain't no, if you see a Camaro, it's a 7th gen Camaro sitting there in parts and pieces that doesn't fit your street stock. It's not the same Camaro that you raced, right? So it's that's the parts and pieces that are out there. You could put a S10 spindle there on some stuff, an S10 A arms versus some of the A arms that you ran. Ain't no S10s in them junkyards no more. Hell,
No.
they really don't let you roam around the junkyards anymore because there's so much money to be had in used parts.
Well,
they go in and get what they want out of them, and then they leave the rest of the cores for everybody else.
And that's the hard part. I mean, hell, junkyards, quote unquote, junkyards are hard to find these days. I mean, it's one of those things when environmental stuff and just whatever. I mean, you can't just pile cars out there anymore. I mean, it's really weird. Like when I go down south, I go down over where Aaron's used to be. From 35, you could look and you'd see all of Floyd's shit out there. From 35 south. I mean, you'd see all those cars out there, maybe a race car or two. You would go over to Morrison's. That's kind of even the bigger one. But when I go down to Lockhart Way, you go to right there at where Morrison Wrecking Yard was and the Rockin' M, all right there side by side. It's like, hey, you can't do that anymore. I mean, for one thing, like you mentioned, I mean, that's a great point. You can't storage those cars anymore because if you have something that's worth half a damn dollar, I mean, whoever's going to come get it and they're going to figure out something to do with it. So it's impossible to have a wrecking yard anymore. I mean, wrecking yards are now used car lots.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, they're resalvaging motors and they're resalvaging. It's cheaper to go buy a fender at a salvage yard than it is to buy an OEM fender for a car that's 10 years old. It's like,
absolutely.
LKQ Auto Parts, completely changed the junkyard mentality when they came through, and Copart same way.
Yep.
So that when those guys came in and changed it, they changed the business model, and some of these, are a lack of a better term, redneck wrecking yards. They couldn't keep up. They couldn't do it. I mean, look at how much our man Don Painters had to change his business model over the last couple of years to keep up. And he's, a local guy that does all he can for racing. And he's had to change. Hell, he had to move out of downtown Austin to a new shop. Now, I guess he finally got that building built after 3.5 years. But, it's I mean, it is what it is now. But
and that's the funny thing with Donald's place over there. That was on 7th, I guess, is where that was. I mean, you think back about that, and that just tells you how Austin has changed. I mean, that wasn't. I mean, that wasn't high dollar real estate. I mean, that wasn't. You didn't have people.
Well, it wasn't. It is now.
No, right? It wasn't. You didn't have people chomping at the bit. I mean, I had friends down there that had taco store or taco shops and restaurants and all this shit, and it's like they finally cave in and they're like, look, I mean, I talked to a couple of people and they're like, they want to pay me millions of dollars for this piece of shit building just so they can knock it down. And I think that's a lot of, I mean, even over there where we're talking about with Aaron's and Big Four. I mean, and back in those days when Dad was racing, Jim, my man Palace, he would tell him, go get what you need. I mean, didn't even have check-in, just go get whatever. I mean, don't have to run a list, just get whatever you need. And that's where it's just very, very different. And that whole area, I mean, now with South Park Meadows and all that shit over there, it's like,
there's a HEB where Aaron's used to be now, grocery store.
Dude, it's unbelievable. I mean, the South Park Meadows thing blows my mind because it was like, back in those days of going to just amazing concerts and doing ungodly things over there in that spot. And it's like now you look there and it's just concrete and buildings everywhere. It's
concrete jungle now.
It's our new life, man. That is our new life. Great stuff right there. At the same time, it sucks. The price of evolution. Talking about all the racing that's going on this weekend, you've got Go Texan Night at the races over at Cotton Bowl Speedway. It'll be our friends from the Texas Dirt Truck Series. I think you saw some comments right there where I think there are 16 already pre-entered. So that's just on the pre-entry part. So it will only tell you that it's going to be more than that. Those truck counts continue to escalate. And again, this is all weather permitting, not to poo-poo on this great event that could be happening, but that'll be coming up at Cotton Bowl Speedway. You can go to racecbs.com. And Bobby, as we talk about all the time with Cotton Bowl Speedway, when we talk about regular shows and so forth, that's one where you get, all the divisions. When you get your outlaw, well, no, that's Waco. Street stocks, sport mods, all of them, IMCA stock cars, they will not lack for car count. And Cotton Bowl is that place to where you don't have to have this massive event. They are going to jam pack you with cars.
Yeah, and they're going to be jam packed with people again this weekend, obviously weather permitting, but they have a great ecosystem down there. I know H and Marianne have been working hard for a number of years to get that ecosystem built up to the way it is, and it's there. I mean, it's definitely there. Over the last couple of years, you've really seen just the unity of those guys. I'd like to see the Cotton Bowl cars travel a little bit more to some of these different bigger events, but hell, they don't have to travel. They got the right amount of competition, the right amount of money right in their backyard. So we'll see. I'd like to see a few more of the Cotton Bowl cars go try the H&P thing, but it's hard when they run on top of each other. But like we said before, there's only so many different dates. But if you can't make it to our friends down in Houston, Cotton Bowl will be a good alternative if you're in the Central Texas area for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. You will have a great time there. Now, when we talk about family fun, clean bathrooms, just pristine facilities, that's the one. Some of these tracks, just by, age, just by being around for a long time. I mean, they may not be the, eat off the floor kind of place. I'm not saying eat off the floor at Cotton Bowl Speedway, but I can tell you one damn thing. If eating off the floor was going to be an option at Cotton Bowl Speedway in Texas, I'm not just talking about South Central Texas. That's going to be the place because it's the newest one, and it's a really, really nice place to go watch racing.
And it's a fun place to watch it too. The racing action is really good.
Yep. We talked a while ago about on-demand shirts. Of course, we do have Revved Up merchandise. If you might be interested in that stuff, you can hit that QR code right there. It takes you straight to the Revved Up merchandise online store with our friends at On Demand Shirts. It'll take you there. You can get shirts, caps, hoodies, all of that. If there's something in particular, a special item that you want, on-demand shirts can hook you up with that. That's the beauty of on-demand shirts, Bobby, is that when I talk to people, because I get people that call and ask me about that, they're like, what's that shirt? What's that all about? The whole thing is like us with the Revved Up stuff, and even with the Dirty Air stuff and all the different things. I mean, our caps are embroidered. These are laser printed. The polos that we wear, those are embroidered. All that stuff is there. So if you hook up with these guys and somebody says, hey, I want a Revved Up shirt, but I want it in hot pink, they can do that because it's all there. It's just a matter of getting it, running it down the line, boom, out the door at your doorstep.
It's that simple.
Pretty much. It is.
And great people too. Great people. Racers supporting racers there at On Demand Shirts. Our buddy James Cole and his whole crew, they do great work. They do the Houston, they do all the local track stuff. They do the Corpus shirts. They've done the Cotton Bowl shirts. They've done I think they do the STEM shirts too. So they do. It's racers supporting racers. So it's great to be a partner. I've enjoyed the partnership we have with On Demand Shirts. That's for damn.
Yeah, one of the really cool things about James is just kind of with the different things that I help them with. It's like James is like promote our tracks, promote our drivers. And I'm like, okay, well, you're one of our drivers. He's like, no, not really. I mean, promote these other guys. Don't worry about me. I mean, talk about Cody Leonard. Talk about all these other guys. I mean, talk about Nathan Titzman. He's like, don't worry about me. And that's
Bo Begno. Bo Begno's got some really good looking shirts. Kyler Ross has a new set of shirts there. The second generation star there, Eddie Ross's daughter. So we need to get her on the show. She's shy, but I bet she would be talking to us.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great list of drivers there. I mean, Marcus Miklicek won a badass race the other night with limited modifieds. I mean, we only had 8 or 9 But man, that was, I mean, fantastic work up on the top side, getting out there and taking care of business. And that was really cool to see. So, yeah, he's got his stuff. So, yeah, ondemandshirts.com, if that's something that you're interested in, they will get you everything that you need. All right, Bob, before we get out of here, I know we got folks checking in on the national side. Let's talk about what we just saw last night at Iowa Speedway. There were a lot of questions going in here, and people were, I think, not really fair to beat up Goodyear on this thing. I think that the tire stuff that we saw is not necessarily a Goodyear problem. I think that most of the stuff that we see right now with this car, with this low profile 18-inch tire, is not a Goodyear problem. But of course, they're the manufacturer of the tire, so they're going to be the ones, and they absorb that, and they own what they own. But this, I think that what we saw this weekend, what we saw last night, the NASCAR race last night, I think is the future of this sport. Place was jam-packed. I posted on X. I said, this place is jammed. And you know what the first response was?
It only holds 40,000 people.
Yeah, it only holds 25,000. Different day and time. Different day and time, man. Your thoughts on this whole weekend at Iowa Speedway?
Well, I thought the Xfinity race on Saturday was actually very entertaining. The fact that the guys were blowing right fronts and left front tires and smacking the wall is not that I like to see carnage like that, but I think it added to the excitement of the show because you didn't know who was going to blow their car up next.
Yep.
Blow out the tires. And I think that what we have found, especially this year, is, no disrespect to Goodyear, but the races where they're having tire problems have been the most entertaining races. Bristol, when the tires were blistering after 50, 60 laps at Bristol, that race was fantastic. Then you had the chance of the guys running out of tires, with the right fronts blowing and left fronts blowing there, smacking the fence. So the fact that Blaney made that last run work on 2 tires on the outside and won the race, and kind of kept Willie B from coming up closer. I mean, I thought it was all in all. I got to watch the first half from Cracker Barrel. Because I had to do Father's Day lunch with my dad at Cracker Barrel, so I was watching the race on my phone. The little peg, the little golf tee game they had. I kind of set it up where the phone was laying against that, so I could watch it while I was waiting on my chicken fried steak. But that's the race as a whole was actually pretty good. The last 2/3 of that race, especially when Larson and Suarez and everybody got together, that changed the whole complexion of that race because Larson was about ready to check out and spank their ass.
Yeah. I thought it was a good. I mean, it had a lot of. There was a lot of back and forth, and there was that unknown, and I do think. I mean, yeah, you don't want to see guys or ladies tear stuff up, but it kind of goes back to kind of my whole thought with that is I really hate it when I see on a short track, weekly racing or bi-weekly, whatever we want to call it, when stuff gets tore up, but. I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way, but when NASCAR people tear their shit up, it's like, okay, well, they've got plenty more and they have the resources there to do it. But you're right. I mean, that the drama and the storylines that have been the good races this year are those. And I think it's a very finite number of those races that are really good. And I do think, and the big question that I heard today kind of coming out of that, it's like, okay, when are we going to, when's Iowa going to get it repaved completely? And I think I wouldn't necessarily do that because, we go back to Atlanta. Remember the Atlanta question? It's like, okay, when's Atlanta going to get repaved? That racing was amazing that we saw on that beat up, weather beaten surface out there. And then Atlanta did a good thing where they went and reconfigured it and did a whole different thing. But I think we've seen all too often to where these repaves come in and they ruin a good product. And I'm sorry that the guys got to work hard. I mean, puts on a good show. Well,
I mean, if they could find a way to do the repave like they did at Wilkesboro everywhere, then every track would start repaving like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that show at Wilkesboro was fantastic on a repave, and it was like magic. So I think if you could find a way to do that at Iowa, because that's another reason I think the track was 5 days old after they repaved the corners when they went to do the Goodyear tire test.
Yeah.
If it was that old. So I think that it becomes a challenge for Goodyear. They know they want softer tires. It creates for a little bit better racing, but I think at the same time they have the reputation. I mean, the worst ever Goodyear race was that race at the Brickyard. Every 10 laps they were blowing out. Don't think we're going to see that at the Brickyard this year, but the problem is now you're getting into that stretch of kind of who cares races, right? I mean, Iowa was there because you don't the Sonoma race. While some of the road course races have been good, Sonoma hadn't always been that good.
Yeah.
Just due to the nature of the racetrack. Of course, it got a lot faster with that repave that they did at Sonoma, and then you got the excitement here of Iowa. Nashville would be pretty exciting in a couple of weeks, but then you got to go to New Hampshire, got to go to Pocono, and you got to wait a little bit before we go to Indy. That Indy race should be in this new car on the oval. That race should be badass.
Yeah.
So you got a couple of races of the who cares. So now if you got a chance to more of a white noise race weekend by putting it on in the background instead of putting it on in the foreground.
Yeah. First race for NBC. And that was the other trending topic yesterday on the X and Facebook about the difference in coverage right there. And I do think I don't really think that it's a thing where Fox doesn't give a damn, because that's the one thing I keep seeing. Fox doesn't care. I think what NBC has done is NBC. I mean, and these are the behind the scenes people. I mean, the booth and all that is great. With I I really didn't miss Dale Jr. that much yesterday.
Until he was gone.
Yeah, no, I thought those guys were solid. I mean, I thought they were nails yesterday. As a matter of fact, like not having Dale Jr. there. It lit those guys, it lit Letarte and Burton and Rick Allen. By the way, happy birthday, Rick Allen. It let them kind of hone their skills. I mean, I think it was kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, Dale's not here. It's our show. I think a lot of this is to where the production staff and just the people that inner workings of that they're better entailed with the sport, that they understand when Kim Coon's talking about tires, we probably ought to be looking at whatever she's talking about and those kind of things. And I don't want to see the crowd. I don't care about that. I mean, if there's something really cool in the crowd, a kid thing or whatever, yeah, show that. But I want to see the racing, and I want to see racing throughout the field. And NBC just really seems to have a better grip on that. And I think that it's maybe from the different stuff that they do. I mean, because they do a lot of stuff on the Peacock and all these different things. And I think a lot of it is that maybe being honed in with a little bit of flow and all these different things. That's the stuff that you want to show. It's the race fan stuff. I don't give a shit about the crowd. I mean, I really don't care. No offense if you're going to a race. I don't care to see you. I want to see the on track and on pit lane stuff.
Well, and they did a pretty good job post-race, too. And granted, they had a little bit extra time because it was on USA versus being on network.
Mm-hmm.
But they did a really good job with an extended post-race coverage versus interviewing 1-2 guys and then cutting off for baseball or something. But speaking of Fox took a lot of shit this week because of the new IndyCar deal.
No.
With all the IndyCar races airing on Network Fox, but yet only like of the 14 races next year on Fox, only 5 of them or so are going to be on Network Fox. So a lot of them going to FS1, and everybody's like, why are the Indy cars getting all of the pub and getting all of the network stuff? I mean, it's a big win for Fox to have. You could tell everybody's like, oh, they're not dedicated to motorsports. They just picked up a 10-year option on the Daytona 500, and I think a 5-year option on the Indianapolis 500, the 2 biggest North American motorsports events out there, and they now will be on the same network. That's massive.
That's powerful right there. And, I think I posted this on Facebook or somewhere to where I really think that this, for Fox, you think about the IndyCar races, they're shorter. It's a shorter, usually a
shorter too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key right there to where they're really honed in right here because, I mean, the NFL, I mean, by the time IndyCar's done, when they race that last race at Nashville, I mean, you still got 3 or 4 weeks before you even get into the first regular season kickoff for the NFL. So I think the schedule fits better. I think that the timeliness of it, I think that Fox can really elevate this product and make it a bigger thing. I don't know what they're going to do with the booth. I don't know what they're going to do with any of that. I don't know. I mean, I know who I'd like to see in the booth and different stuff like that, but I don't know what they'll do with that. But I think that the big win right now is for IndyCar because they need that push. They need that shove. And where I really look at that, this could be a really big thing, Bobby, and I don't know how it all works out, is that maybe, at some point you're piggybacking where IndyCar races and then boom, all right, let's head over to, I don't know, TMS. I mean, wherever. And then you double dip them on the big one or go on over to FS1 and catch whatever, so I don't know, man. I think it's a big deal for IndyCar. And,
it's definitely going to make it more popular.
I think so, man. I really think, and and here's the thing to where I think we've both kind of thought this for the longest time, even back to the Revved Up ATX show at the Horn, to where IndyCar, Formula One, oh, they look alike. They're open wheel. It's the same damn car. Well, no, they're not. But this is really IndyCar's chance to differentiate themselves from Formula One. Because you got Formula One, they do all their thing on ESPN and Sky Sports and all that. Boom, here's IndyCar. And it's a North American-based series. You're going to see some oval track races. There are more ovals, a few. And I think this is where it can really branch itself out and not be like Formula One.
I think Indy will turn out to be a little more mainstream like it was in the late 80s, early 90s, just
Agreed.
because everything is on network TV, just like it was back in the day when it was all on ABC, right? So Fox is it now. Now, did they pay a pretty penny for the IndyCar series? Absolutely not. Truck up to pay for NASCAR, because NASCAR is the live motorsports that makes the difference here in North America, here in the United States. They probably got one hell of a deal on that for IndyCar to be all on network Fox, especially the Indy 500. They probably got more. They probably paid the larger fee for that, and then probably got 4 or 5 races thrown in. That's how everything ended up on Fox. Mm-hmm. No different than the USFL or the UFL now. They were a part owner of the USFL, and it didn't get massive ratings, but you know what? It was something good to watch on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon when you're waiting for college football and pro football back. What do you think of that deal with the first season of the UFL with the XFL and the USFL combined? I think it worked out pretty good, except for that championship game when San Antonio got their ass handed to them.
I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. I mean, kind of my thought is what can be gained from that is what I like about those leagues are they do things that are outside of the box for the NFL. I mean, the conglomerate of the National Football League, they do things a certain way, and it takes a hell of a lot to be able to change anything. I mean, like with changing the kickoff rules and all the different things like that. I'm not the biggest fan of the whole, and I know that this is done with the UFL in this case. Solely because it's not the NFL with all of the hear the quarterback talking and do all this. It's kind of back to the whole fan thing. I don't care about that. I'm all about the game, but I do think that what this has done is, especially with the huge TV package. I mean, it was on Fox and ESPN, and that put it in front of a lot of people, and the ratings were not that bad. From everything that I've kind of been studying around and looking at different ratings metrics, it hasn't been bad. Just like the WNBA right now is blowing shit out of the water, and it's like now there are more sports leagues that are viable and viable options and entertaining. And I certainly have no problem with June 16th, as it was yesterday, having a professional football game on. And I think what that really does, honestly, is, to me, Bobby, it's a more viable option for these kids that, once they're done with college, that don't get drafted, that are going to be, unsigned free agents, whatever. It gives them a place to go continue their craft, and maybe get to the NFL. I mean, you just never know. I'm never going to bitch about having more pro football than less.
Yeah. Well, I think it worked. I mean, it didn't make sense to have 2 separate leagues. It makes sense to merge them, and they did, and I think it worked out okay. The rating, I mean, NASCAR was kicking their ass on ratings, but for what it was, I thought the ratings were pretty good. And I think Fox and ESPN agreed too, because the same thing with the rights. They didn't pay a whole hell of a lot of money to get the rights to the USFL. So,
yeah. And just think about kind of back to the Fox thing, kind of to button this one up, is, if I'm not mistaken, and I may be, but I don't think I am. I believe that the Super Bowl this year is on Fox. So you get to February and you're going to have the Super Bowl. Is that right? I think that's right. I think it
alternated between CBS and Fox for like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
We're only in like year 5. So
yeah, NBC, we get to hear Collinsworth and all that. Well, now Troy and Joe. Oh no, that's ABC. But so think about this: if indeed the Super Bowl is on Fox in February, they're going to, because Fox does a really good job, and as you have mentioned, predominantly those ratings are better for the Daytona 500 when you have the Super Bowl and on Fox. Not only will they be promoting the Daytona 500, they will be promoting the Indy 500. I guarantee.
They dumb if they don't.
I guarantee you that's going to go. And see who was in the booth yesterday. That will be the #1 analyst on Fox, Tom Brady. I mean, it's a lot of things that are coming together, and I think this is a win-win. And I'm not. I get that folks don't like the Fox coverage, but it's not that Fox doesn't care about NASCAR. They wouldn't pay that kind of money if they didn't care about NASCAR. They wouldn't re-up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just froze. So
yeah, you're froze. Perfect timing. I was about to shut this down. So yeah, you're froze. I'm gonna pull you off the screen, my man. All right, guys. So we've got the weekend coming up, and again, if you are in the Texas area, what you'll want to do is definitely be checking your weather apps and be checking in with your racetracks online. Here's a quick kind of overview of what's going on in Texas. And again, if you guys want to check in on Dirty Air on Thursday, I'll get you more of a national idea of what's going on around the country. So you've got the Alan Roy and Memorial going on there. So you've got all of that happening. The Mike Parker, all of that. It begins on Thursday. That's over at Texarkana. Your Hunt County is set to go on Friday. The American Crate Late Model Series. You've got Texana set to be racing as well down here in South Texas. Heart of Texas Speedway is set to go. That'll be night number 2 over at Texarkana. Looking at Saturday, you've got Super B. You've got Twin 20s at Rocket Raceway Park. HMP is set to be racing as well. That's the asphalt track in Texas. And then you got 105. That's kind of in that same area. Cotton Bowl Speedway that we talked about is set to be racing there as well. Grayson County, all of that set for this weekend. You can catch that with our friends over on Race On. And for national super late model action and tracks up north, you can catch that with our friends at Racing America. So all of that, we'll get that all compiled, get it up on the Revved Up page and get you those dates. That way you can check into those great streamers and catch the action. As we always say, if you can't get to the racetrack, find a streaming service that is going to put you in that seat. Support the racetracks and support those that keep short track racing alive. Thank you all for being a part of the program this evening. A huge thanks to our man Justin Whitehead checking in for his huge Mike Parker Memorial that we're talking about. $10,000 to win for the factory stocks, $10,000 to win for the limited modifieds. Man, you name it, it's going to be happening right there. And of course, our man Cody Leonard, great conversation as he wins in the STEM series at I-37 in Pleasanton this past weekend. Thanks to Cody for checking in as well. Showtime Bobby Chaffee is down south. My name is Rodney Rodriguez. We will do it again next Monday. Follow us on the Facebook at Revved Up Sports Show. Search it right there. And we look forward to doing this again. # Real Race Talk from Texas. This has been the Revved Up Sports Show. You guys have a great week.